Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, you're good, Helen.
Perfect. So hi, everybody, and welcome. So my name is Helen Jensen. I work for the Bow to Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security in the capacity of research manager. And today this webinar is called Welcome to CANOVI. CANOVI stands for Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement. It's a program that has the goal that works in a number of different aspects, but specifically variety trials for vegetables under organic conditions and also participatory breeding of organic vegetables. Today, we're really talking about vegetable trialing. And this is really meant as a forum to learn and discuss for people who are participating in variety trials this year. We have two speakers today. Alex Lyon from the University of British Columbia. She's a research associate there in the Center for Sustainable Food Systems and has a lot of previous experience in variety trials, particularly in the NOVIC program in the United States. And also Nicolas Anzalbert, who is the founder and CEO of SeedLinked, which is a collaborative data sharing platform that helps characterize, breed, source, and harvest the best plants. And he'll be telling you more about that platform today because we use it.
Hey everyone.
To collect,
yeah, thanks for having
the data.
I can speak both language too, so feel free to ask questions in both language.
Great. And just a few notes before I pass this off to Alex. So like currently in the room right now, we don't have any French speaking participants, but we have made the slides bilingual so that hopefully people can follow along in either language. And we would encourage you in the chat room to ask questions in either language, whatever your preferences is. And me and my colleague Hugo will be able to answer questions in French as need be. And let's see, did I have any other specific details to add? I think that's about it. We'll have two periods for questions, like after Alex's portion and at the very end. So please put any questions in the chat room at any time, and then you will have a chance to actually ask questions out loud as well. And now I will pass it on to Alex to introduce the variety trials.
Okay, thank you, Helen. And I also want to take a moment to thank everybody for being here all at the same time with everything else that's going on in your lives. Let me take a moment to share my screen and then we'll get going. How does that look to everyone? Are you all seeing me in the slides in present mode?
We're not seeing you in present mode, Alex.
Okay. Let me try again.
You shared your screen all right. It's just that
it's the wrong window.
The presentation is in editing mode and not in presentation mode.
Okay. Let me try again. How's that?
Looks great.
And the text is not quite there. My apologies, I'm not quite used to Google Slides, but we'll roll with it. Okay. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I want to make sure that we end up with enough time for people to ask questions. So if you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat window, like Helen mentioned, as I'm going through the slides. So the goal of the CANOVI variety trials is to understand how varieties perform in our farms. Really, when we say target environment, that's all of your farms across Canada. So looking at aspects of the environment like regions, what region you're in, your soils, climate, and what cropping systems you're using. So really, our goal here is looking at organic cropping systems, but even within that, all the different management practices you use. And then within that, to identify the best varieties for your market needs, which also vary. So having everyone put in their information and observations about the varieties gives us that diversity of opinion. So that includes things like flavor, appearance, and in a lot of the crops we're working with, looking at season extension, how well things hold up in the field later into the season, and how well they store, so that we can work on crops that give a longer market window. Part of that is identifying replacement varieties. So in other words, if you've encountered this problem of having a variety that you really liked and really depended on, and then it disappeared from a seed catalog for one reason or another, variety trials are a great way to have something in mind. It's in your back pocket that you can replace that variety with. And then another reason for doing these varieties is getting information about them in order to do plant breeding, either through identifying an open pollinated variety that is pretty good but needs some cleaning up that we can work with, or things that can be used to make crosses to develop new populations for plant breeding. And we'll get in, or I guess we're not going to talk about that today, but that's part of what we're doing in this project. Right, so identifying parents and testing results. If you've been doing our CANOVI variety trials for a while, you've seen some of the crops that we've done, and we try to trial a crop for at least 2 years, but then have room to move on to other crops. Orange storage carrots are a crop that we're continuing for several years because we're also doing breeding work in that crop. So that's one of our 2020 crops. And then last year we added red carrots, and this year we have red carrots as well, with some, there aren't a lot of red carrot varieties really on the market, so we've added in some kind of reddish purple varieties as well, which we can get into in more detail later. And then a new crop this year is Radicchio. If you're not familiar with this crop, one of its appeals is that it is a salad green that is quite cold hardy and that we can grow in the fall and winter in Canada. And it's something where we don't really have a lot of information about how well it grows in these regions and at this latitude. So you'll see with this trial, we're testing a lot of different varieties. You had your choices of what you wanted to select, and this is really a year when we're screening a lot and then hoping to narrow down what we really need to look at. And then another new crop this year is Rutabaga, following that theme of late fall and winter crops and storage crops. Okay, so now we'll get into each of those in a bit more detail. For Rutabaga, there are no hybrid varieties in this crop. So this was a crop where the feedback we heard was that there's a lot of open pollinated varieties. Some of them may have more uniformity than others. There's not a lot of information about how well they grow. So this was a good crop for trialing. So we're looking for you to evaluate things like how uniform the roots are. Not that we always need perfect uniformity, but just have more information about these varieties and how big they are. Some of that size issue is going to depend on how you plant it, but still information on how they size up. A really key one is the appearance, so how smooth the root is. And we have some examples here, that bottom picture of something that can happen with root crops where there's a lot of root hairs. And this can be something that's really determined by the genetics of the variety, and it makes them harder to harvest and clean. So we'll be looking for that to be included in your feedback. And then any observations on differences in flea beetle damage and clubroot, which is, clubroot is particularly an issue out here on the West Coast. And then also our varieties have a range of colors. Some are kind of a purplish, some are a green. That will be something that we'll get into how these things play into SeedLinked when we get to SeedLinked. But this would be something where you rate how you like the appearance overall, but then please provide more notes and photos on what the variety actually looks like. Do you want me to stop for any questions right now? I'm noticing some messages in the chat, I think.
Oh, it's just Helene that's giving in complimentary information on the chat.
Okay, great. If anyone wants me to stop for questions.
Yeah,
I'll
Alex,
for Helen. Yeah?
I'm taking notes here, and I will illustrate when I talk about SeedLinked the different traits, and maybe we can discussion kind of illustrate when we talk about
okay, that sounds great. Yeah, because I'm talking about what we thought was important to look at, but then that needs to be translated a little bit into how you're actually rating this in SeedLinked.
Yeah.
Sorry. And just to clarify what I'm putting in the chat is that in the intro, I forgot to say there's also a red pepper trial happening in Ontario. And we're not really talking about that in this national webinar, but just that all the information presented here is very much relevant to that, how to use SeedLinked and so on. That's what the chat was.
Okay, great, thanks. I can't really see the chats pop up when I'm in speaker view, so thanks for telling me. Yeah, one thing that we have been trying to work on is allowing more regional flexibility for people to set their own priorities within your regions. And we ended up with Radicchio and Rutabaga crops that everybody wanted to trial across all regions anyway, but then there are some crops like peppers where the growers in Ontario really wanted to keep trialing that crop. So we're trying to accommodate all of that. Okay, and then Radicchio. Radicchio is another new crop for us, and we've been working very closely with the Culinary Breeding Network and other researchers and farmer networks in the Pacific Northwest in the US who've been trialing Radicchio for a number of years and really trying to develop the market for it and work with chefs and all sorts of other exciting things. So we've been working with them on understanding what varieties would be good to start with in our trials, and also working quite closely with representatives at Osborne Seeds and at Johnny's, who had some good information for us. Okay, without taking up our whole presentation on Radicchio, I will say that there are 4 market classes here that we selected as good starting points that are that combination of easier to grow and also a bit milder in flavor. Radicchio can be, or usually has some degree of bitterness. These are on the less bitter side. So those 4 types are Chioggia, which is what you've probably seen most likely if you've seen just one Radicchio. It's a tight, a wrapped head. Castelfranco, which is more of a loose, almost lettuce-shaped head with this beautiful speckling. Treviso, which is a longer, still a tight head, but a longer shape, almost like a large, I'm gonna say it the American way, endive. And then Lucia, which is sort of, has the same speckling as Castelfranco, but is a more tightly wrapped head. And within each of these 4 types, we tried to put in options in the variety list that have various days to maturity. So if you, and we hopefully we communicated this clearly, I know it was a lot of information, but if you are growing in a climate where you have a hard winter cutoff, in other words, really anywhere besides the maritime West Coast, those varieties that are in the shorter days to maturity, shorter to mid days to maturity, will work for you to harvest, hopefully work for you to harvest into October, November. And then there were a few varieties that have very long days to maturity that we're going to be working with here in BC to try harvesting into January and February because they can hold up in the field. So you've selected your varieties, and part of this trial is experimenting not just with how you like the flavor and the marketability and all of that, but also how well they work on the days that you planted them. Radicchio is really sensitive to planting date, and there's some things we may need to figure out with this crop about when to plant each variety in your region. Okay, moving on to our carrots. With the red trial, you'll notice there are not very many varieties. We had also some trouble sourcing seeds, so some of the varieties that were there last year are not there this year. However, we did want to keep trialing red carrots. One of the biggest concerns with red carrots here is bolting, and you may experience a lot of bolting in these varieties, so just a warning that that's probably going to happen. And then we're also looking at color and flavor. These have a range of redness. Some of them are more on the pink side. Some of them have like a reddish purple skin, but an orange core. So photos, again, are great, and how well they do in your different regions. And the red carrot trial, we're not looking at storage. Most of these varieties are not storage varieties anyway, so it's really about really addressing that bolting and flavor issue right now. And then with orange carrots, we're looking at nonce types. So like in the picture, kind of a rounded tip that is usually better for storage. Some of them are not exactly nonce class, but they're in that storage. We've selected them for their potential for storage. So looking at some hybrids and some open pollinated varieties, and looking at their root uniformity and appearance and how well they store. One thing I would like to mention here with the 2 crops where we're evaluating storage, so that's orange carrots and rutabaga. Storage is different from winter. I think in SeedLinked it's called winter hardiness or cold resistance, I can't remember.
Yeah, we have winter hardiness and storage. Yeah.
Yes, so winter hardiness we're using to refer to how well it holds up in the field. So can you harvest it really late, maybe even after a bit of frost, and how much does it just completely disintegrate after frost, or how much does it still hold up? So that's really relevant with Radicchio. Storage is how well does it hold up after you've harvested and you have it in your storage. So with the storage trait, we are not including it in SeedLinked in this trial because it has to be evaluated so much later than the rest of the traits. So you will receive a separate invitation to a storage evaluation in SeedLinked for orange carrots and rutabaga. We were really pleasantly surprised and impressed with how many people were up for doing these trials this year in the middle of everything that we're facing. So thank you again for being up for this. We have lots of trials all across Canada. I think we have like 65 total signed up in all of our crops. And yes, and so we have stipends available. We have $100 for planting each trial, and then $300, so not combined, but if you plant the trial and start it and are not able to finish it, you'll still receive $100. If you complete the trial and upload your data to SeedLinked, you'll receive $300 stipend. And we want to get these stipends processed a little more efficiently and earlier this year than we were able to do last year. So we'll be sending, like, just look out for instructions on what you need to do to process your stipend and receive it. Information and results from these trials. I'll go through a few links. The crop instructions and printable data sheets are at this top link. So the printable data sheets would be if you prefer to have a piece of paper with you to do your evaluations and then enter it into SeedLinked later, rather than taking your phone or iPad or whatever it is out into the field with you. The SeedLinked trial account, you should have received an invitation for each crop you're signed up for. Let us know if you did not. I know a few people have contacted us already about that, and we'll be working to address any issues. And then links here to, this is the site or the link for our site at the UBC Farm webpage, and then the Bauta Initiative has a webpage as well. So the Bauta Initiative webpage for the project is really where you'll go for most of the practical information about what you need to do. And the webpage within CSFS really is more about framing the overall project and the research. Please do share your variety trials and your information. We have a Facebook group where people can post questions as well as just chat about what's going on with your trials, which is really a fun thing to see. Sorry, Helen, I don't know what this link is. Fill in the seed production training needs assessment.
Sure, I can jump in there. So this is something that was put together by the Bauta Initiative communications or training group, not me specifically, but basically this is a survey that's gone out to all participants in our program to find out what kind of training needs people have this year, especially looking at adapting to a year when on-farm visits are likely to be not possible or very, very limited. So basically by answering this, people helped the Bauta team structure webinars and other trainings to best fit the needs of producers this year. So filling this out is really helpful to us and hopefully helpful, it should be helpful to you as well.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I think we can really move into SeedLinked here. I see these pictures and videos as really fleshing out the information that we're putting into SeedLinked, and I'd like to get more of those photos organized so that you can actually see what the varieties look like, as well as seeing these ratings.
Yeah, and Alex, I'm going to talk this after, but while you're talking about this, we're improving all the picture, and picture can really be uploaded very quickly now on the app of SeedLinked. And in the fall, I know it's not ready yet, but we are building also a social media piece per trial. So you will have within SeedLinked a social media within the trial where everybody can see, exchange, and comments and so forth. So
before we move to the next section on SeedLink, perhaps are there any questions from participants around what Alex presented? So I would simply add that we do early evaluation, a mid-season evaluation, and a kind of post-harvest evaluation. So these are the kind of 3 moments in the season you want to really be using SeedLinked and adding grading each variety according to the criteria.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Hugo. And I also kind of skipped over this slide of who to contact. So just make sure you have the email address of your regional coordinator in your contacts list, and they're the first person to go to with issues about SeedLinked. You can contact Helen or me or Nico. That's right.
yeah, and Nico is the help at seedlinked.com. You will see the email in the website.
So if we don't have any questions, Nicholas, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Let me just share my screen. Okay, can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everyone for having me, and thanks for your time today. I'm going to try to be quick too. Thanks, Alex, for the start for me, gave me a good understanding. I'm going to try to echo with what you're saying. Just going to start to give a quick intro of Seedling before I just do a live demo, just to go really give you concrete example and how to do it. Yeah, it's super exciting. As Alex said, you have 65 people in Canada trialing globally in North America. This season has been very amazing. We have almost 1,500 growers. We're gonna send review about 20 different crops, and so all this information is gonna be open as we are building Seedling. It's still in prototype phase, but thanks to all of you, we are making it, improving every day. All this information is going to be available for everyone, so it's a very exciting time. And to really give a very quick overview of SeedLinked, it's really to help of trial management, to invite people, to collect the data, to share the information, to be able to take information in the field for the grower or researcher with an app, and sharing picture, and also, yeah, the analysis and sharing of the results as soon as you complete the trial. And I will show you how to do. As soon as you press complete, you will see the running results. So instead of waiting maybe 6 to 12 months, you can see already the result. And by the time you finish, we will be far along in development that you will be able to see all the pictures that have been posted per variety, all the comments, that we don't have this yet, but it's almost done. And another part that I think is important for you to understand is that all this information is going to be connected to all those variety and behind the search engine that will be completed in the fall, like a nice search engine. So people can go back and search with all the results by region and so forth. And so it's not only the trial aspect, it's the sharing and sharing all this information. Okay, so I'm just going to dive now into a demo. So can you see the invites, the new screen here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So that's an example of email you may have received, but if you're not doing the Radicchio, it's going to be another one, but you will receive an email like this. If you don't have an account, with SeedLinked, you click here to create your own account very quickly. You really need to create your account with the email that you've been invited, because it's all connected via an email. And so right now we haven't found a better way, but if you create an account with a separate email, it's not going to recognize that you've been invited to. So please use the email that you've been invited to. If you really have an account, you can click here. You also have here a tutorial video if you are kind of lost. And if all this does not help, really, you can send an email to any of us. And so when you logged in, you will see the invite on top here to accept or reject. You can, if you click here on trial info, you will see all the varieties, the crop, carrots. That's an example of, it's a dummy trial just to show you how it works. As soon as if you click accept, it's going to show. If you reject, you're not going to see the trial anymore. But let's say if you click accept, it's automatically going to land on the trial. Here you can already see the variety. If you have multiple trials, you can go back here. And here you can see a whole list of trials. Most of you are going to have 1 or 2 or 3. And as soon as here you see in green or white, if you click here in this new trial in the review, you're going to have a pop-up planting window to be able to enter a planting date for all the variety at the same time. This is going to be able to edit. So if you don't know the planting date, you can click here and you can review, or if you know, or if the planting date in the future, you can say, oh, I think I'm going to plant the 19, all right. I can click enter. And your planting date is going to be here, so you can, oh, finally I planted the 18, let's change it. Or maybe I planted this one, the 23rd. Or so yeah, so that's kind of the flow all the way to, so accepting the trial, to review and start reviewing. And so here you see traits. Here for the demo, I only have 2 traits, but you will highly likely have way more than 2 traits. And so here to review, let's say bolt resistance, just click, it's very easy. You can upload picture here, comments, or let's say atomic red has been totally destroyed, maybe by rodent or something, you can mark as failure, or you can come back to it. And so, yeah, here's kind of the review process. Here you see you have an interactive review process. You can see where you are through the process of reviewing. So you've been registered, you accepted, you planted, you may have transplanting or you may not have, and then you have the traits. And so let's say if I do that, you see it's kind of dynamic, and okay, I've done. For the traits, just to maybe illustrate a little bit, the traits, yeah. For example, for flea beetle, just as for Rutabaga example, is going to be under insect tolerance. And so really follow your intuition in terms of 1 to 5. You may have received also maybe more strict guideline from CANOVI team, but really where we see the best result in review is that just follow your gut feeling. You have so many people reviewing, and so that seems to be really works the best, instead of maybe trying to spend an hour to figure out if I need to put a 3 or 5. I think if you follow your intuition, it's typically how it works the best. And so, for example, for flea beetle, insect tolerance, if it's a perfect clean crop, it's going to be 5. If it's totally eaten to the ground, it's going to be 1, as an example. Or clubroot, I believe it's going to be under disease, and it's going to be the same, 5. It's going to be very clean, and 1, very impacted. And then for uniformity and appearance, for Rutabaga, same, 5, really good uniformity. I want to just mention here, please try to use the app. We have Android and iOS app. I think you probably can see here my screen of the app. It's hard for me to demo the app on Zoom, but I have a YouTube video, and you can find on YouTube on SeedLinked. You download wherever you download the app. The credentials are the same as the credential of your PC, and you cannot sign up into Seedling app, meaning you need to have an account and credential to be able to log in. We don't have a login process in the app yet. So that's just a FYI, but when you logged in, you just click review, and people who use the app feel it's more intuitive than the PC, and so that's very useful. So you can enter dates, review. On top, you have the different trade. You can scroll. Oh yeah, something I did not talk, you can add multiple review. So if you click twice, you can replace a review, add a review, and I will show quickly how it works here too. So here I already have a 3. Let's say the disease resistance, you want to enter multiple review, or you want to edit it, you can click again on it and see you have a pop-up. You can see your 3 here. Maybe I thought it was more 2. You can delete it if you want. You can erase, and all right, 2 at the review. But here you have your 2, but maybe you want to enter multiple review. Like you have a 2, but early on it was maybe a 2, but at the end there was other disease, and really it seems really clean. I want to add a 5. You can also enter a reason. And see now it's an average of the 2, so you have 2 review. And if you want to have a 3rd one or edit it, you can delete or edit here too. And so on the app, it will be like this. And on the app, if you click with your hand on the name of the variety, it's open up. You can enter dates, comments, picture, and picture on the go is much easier. In 2 weeks, we are done with the disconnectivity feature. So we are testing it to make sure everything is working now. But so you will be able to use any device, even if it's not connected. Let's say you're on your house, you have Wi-Fi with your iPad, you have your app running. You go in the field, it's no more Wi-Fi or no more data plan cellular. You will still be able to review, and the apps will automatically recognize when you come back to a connection, it will automatically sync and send the data to the cloud. So it's almost done. It was really something that everybody asked. It seems very simple, and it was a pain to do, but it's almost done. So yeah, so the app, I think that's about it. Yeah, you can upload a video very quickly, and you can also complete a trial. But I'm going to show you how to complete a trial now. Just look at my notes if I haven't forgot anything. Accept, plant, view. Yeah, so let's say you're ready to you completed all your trades. I'm just going to do it here quickly. You can enter last harvest to, let's say, okay, I'm ready. You click on complete trial, and you can click on whatever you want. But here you have last question. It's like, would you grow this variety again? You can also save here and say, oh, I'm not ready to finally complete. So you kind of save it, and you can come back to it. We also have smiley face. You don't have to do this. You can add comments here. You can save or come back. Those are the same comment as here. And so, and then if you keep going here, we ask a few questions. Was the trial really good? Was it on organically ground or certified? Was it field? Is there a specific thing you want to mention? Was it really full sun? Did you have any excess rain, hail, or abnormal heat, maybe some waiting? You can put management comment here. And then you can save here. And this is still not complete, but you can just press complete here. And when you complete it, here you have ongoing and here you have completed trial. You will land here and you have a result now button here, and you can watch it. I'm going to show you a trial where there's real data for you to see. Let's log in to a real account. And we can take those are all the trial we did here in our farm. So here a pepper with seed save exchange, for example. And as soon as you click complete and you can result, you can see all the results here. But here we had all those variety. And when you over here, you can see my rating, the average rating, and the number of review. I'm hoping by the time you are done, you will have a little icon here of picture and an icon of comments. And when you click on it, you will be able to see all the picture and icon from everyone. You have also the stat here. You can play with the data. You may want just to look at disease resistance, or you may want even to create your own equation of trait. Let's say for me, disease, earliness, flavor, and yield are the top traits. It seems that Joe Big Blockies was close to the top with this one. And you can also look at here who would like to grow again. It's really in correlation with the two. That seems to be a good variety. In certain trial, we have farmer and gardener. You may want to only look at farmer or gardener. In the US, we don't have this yet for Canada, but you may want to look at only the data from my hardy zone. But that's for the Canada, we are working on it. So we've seen everything now from invitation to result. Please give feedback. This is still in testing, and every time I give a presentation or I talk to people, I learn more things that we need to add to the development queue. And so in terms of milestone, what's coming, it's our present. We have this disconnectivity piece that is very important. And then we have a lot of things we hope to complete for the fall. We have a full redesign of the grower where farmer will be able to add their own check to a trial. If you're invited to any trial, you can add another variety. Maybe you're growing on your farm and you will be synced to it. You will be able to have a better interactivity with results, checking against benchmark of check. You will have more app feature. We are hoping to get internationalization by next winter if we get funding, and two languages will be French and Spanish. More environmental information integrated into the platform. And I think a big one is our search engine here, a picture that will be done by November. There are targets where you will be able to really see in a much better way all the data has been shared in a nice interactive way with where you can find it and where you can buy it, who review it. We also gonna have a social media piece, and this is by January 2021, so by next year, where within a trial you will be able to see feed of people asking questions, posting picture, and so forth. And so, yeah, thanks so much for testing it. And some of you will have bugs and issue. I apologize. It's just the process of developing a software collaboratively. It's the most efficient, but it can be frustrating. But I'm so thankful that you all can join. And so I'm the one talking today, but really behind SeedLinked is a growing team working all the time on the platform, but also the broader team is you and all the farmer and all the people using it. But the core team on every day is a combination of breeder, farmer, data scientists, and software people. And so we are going to be 7, we hope, by August full-time, which is kind of crazy to think about it, but we hope it's going to go much quicker to improve this platform for everyone. So right now it's been bootstrapping with me and a couple people here and there, but we hope by in the next couple of months it's going to really scale up to move quicker. So thanks so much. If any question.
I have a question, Helen. It comes from a participant who's not on the call. The question is, can you explain the, so it's, when you pick the 5, it's like the 5 stars, it's a rating versus a ranking. And can you just a little bit explain about how it's not like some of yours will be for sure 1 and some will be 5, but that they could all be 5 or they could all be 1. Can you explain ranking versus rating?
Sure. So it's kind of like Mikoto did go into this a little bit, and just to kind of add to what he said, basically what you want to be doing is as much as possible capturing the real variation that you see across varieties. You don't want to be inventing variation just to make sure that you have at least 1 1 and 1 5, but you also don't want to be lumping everything into a 3. So what I think is really good practice to do is before you start rating anything, like keep in mind what traits you're looking for. Like if it's insect damage, like go walk through your whole plot and just look at the insect damage, like before you start rating anything, and just notice like, okay, this one has a lot of flea beetle damage, this one has a bit less, this one doesn't have any. I mean, hopefully, like, well, I don't know if that will actually happen, but that would be nice to have some with flea beetle resistance. And then you just want to set more like kind of using your own internal knowledge, like of what would be like a very insect damaged plant, and say, okay, like this one is just terrible, it's been decimated, so that would be, I think that's a 1, right, Nico? Like very bad damage.
Yeah.
And so, but you might not have a 1. You might kind of look through it, and as again, like all of you will have some prior knowledge of these crops or of crops in general. You might look through it and be like, well, there's nothing terrible. Like there's a few that might be 3s, like kind of moderately damaged by insects, and most of them might be 5s. Most of them might not have any. So it's kind of a combination of trying to capture all the differences between everything without forcing a fit into like all the categories. And you're not trying to rank. Like ranking would be if you're saying, okay, I've got 5 varieties and I'm trying to say this one is number 1, this one's number 2, this one's number 3, number 4, number 5. Like you're not trying to do that. You're just trying to say which, like they could all be 3s potentially, or you could have 1 of each rating. I hope that helps.
And when you are in this uncomfortable position of giving a review, it's totally normal. I've been a breeder for 10 years and I'm all the time uncomfortable. And actually when you're in this uncomfortable phase, it's really good. And the review you're gonna give, your first impression, is gonna be the best. And we all the time underestimate our first feeling of what it should be, but really your knowledge is amazing. Like all the results we got last year, the trends are really interesting. And so just follow that.
Can I add?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, if I can add one thing, I just want to acknowledge for anyone who feels confused by this after doing the CANOVI trials for several years, this approach has shifted from when we started. When we started these trials, when we were not using SeedLinked, we were using an approach that was more what I was familiar with and comfortable with, which was a ranking, and we were encouraging people to go through the field and compare them each to each other and pick a 1 and a 5 in your trial. And I really learned a lot from Nico and from working with SeedLinked and seeing the power of this approach when it's used over a really wide number of trials. So like, if you received conflicting information in the past, it's because we have evolved in the approach.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Okay, sorry to maybe I've brought some confusion.
No, it's good. Like I shifted my thinking about this through talking to you, and I think it's a really good thing. It makes a lot of sense to me. You don't want to introduce variation when there isn't variation.
Yeah, and I think it makes the approach simpler, and so maybe more accessible, just following your own sense. And we talked with Hugo before the call of something, if you're doing Radicchio or even potentially all the other crop, you may be receiving 15 variety, and you may have only 6 that you receive seed or you wanted to grow. I think you can all see my screen here, but here you have an option to fail a variety here. And feel free to, and somehow it will kind of deactivate the varieties that you're not using. And so if you click yes, you can see that this variety has been deactivated. And now I only have those 2 here, for example. So here I cannot review anymore those 1. I cannot do anything. It's okay if there's a planting date, so that's one thing I wanted to cover, I forgot. And another thing is in Radicchio, you may do more than 1 planting date in your trial. Are some people going to do multiple planting date or just 1 planting date?
We have sort of left it up to them. We've mostly talked about it in terms of 1 planting date. Okay. This is a level of complexity that I didn't know whether we should introduce this year, but from the people I've talked to in Washington and Oregon who've really been working with Radicchio a lot, some of those farmers have figured out different planting dates for each variety based on what they've learned about how that variety grows. So that may be something to do in the future. This year, we're still recommending, if you're not familiar with this crop, just plant them all at the same time and let this be a learning year. If you're already really familiar with this crop and you think you know that one of these types needs to be planted earlier or later, go for it. If they can well, this is a question for Nico, if they can enter different planting dates for each variety.
Yeah, and so we cannot. However, if you really are doing multiple, contact us and we have a way around. We can create a separate trial for you. And you will have just 2 trials in your profile, which is totally fine and easy. That's something else we are working on for hopefully next year. Just click duplicate and add a planting date, and you will just duplicate your trial. But
great.
Yeah. So that's one.
Thanks, Nico.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just add about the Radicchio, if you do have a lot of knowledge about this crop or just want to experiment and you're doing different planting dates, please just email us. Like, the more information on this crop, which is a bit complex and new for us, the more information we can have about your practices and whether they're working or not, the better we'll be able to revise this trial for next year.
Yeah, and the beauty is that, like Alex, you mentioned the 65 people, I don't know how many in the Radicchio, but every one of you, we have highly likely a different planting date, and so we're going to be able to share this information, and you'll be able to gain knowledge on what planting date seems to have been the most successful, or which variety have been more successful with which planting date and which region.
So we had a question about just defining what are row feet, like what are 12 row feet? And just to specify, that means it's a total of 12 feet of the plant. So it could be 12, 3 sections, 3 4-foot sections or something. It's just, it adds up to 12. It's not 12 feet of a bed with many rows in it. So just to clarify that, it can be really subdivided however you want.
Yeah, just because some people have different practices already of how many rows they plant next to each other in a bed.
And just to maybe build on that a little bit, in the crop protocols, you'll see that there's a range of row feet that we ask for. So ideally, the more individuals of a plant that you grow, the more you'll be able to detect things like uniformity, like how it behaves overall to like bolting, things like that. Especially if it's an open pollinated variety with a bit of variation in it. But we also want to be aware that people have different amounts of time and space available. So if you need to grow less per variety, like fewer row feet, that's okay. Like there's a lower end of the range. And if you really, really want to explore all the variation of a variety, you can grow more. But we've tried to leave that flexible depending on people's capacity. Are there any other questions, either in the chat or just that someone wants to bring up? So
I could just mention a bit about missing varieties, or if you happen to receive varieties that were different from what you signed up for. Just to note that there were some things that didn't arrive in time or turned out to have smaller quantities. Some of it was due to disruption in shipping because of the pandemic. Others is just normal stuff that happens each year. So just acknowledging you might not have, especially with the Radicchio trial, received exactly what you signed up for. We're sorry for the inconvenience there.
And I think for the Rutabaga trial, there's one variety that is still, I guess, somewhere in the mail, and you've received your other Rutabaga seeds. And if we receive the other in time, we'll send you that last variety as well.
Is there any instructions or things we should know in terms of seed saving for the growers who want to save seed on a variety? Can they do that?
We don't have any protocols for that as part of this, but growers are definitely very welcome to. I don't think any of these varieties have restrictions. Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any restrictions in terms of intellectual property on saving seeds on any of these varieties.
I can't actually answer that for sure.
Okay.
I would imagine that with most of the open pollinated varieties, there isn't. If you have questions about a specific variety that you would like to confirm first, let us know and we'll try to help you figure that out. But also note that there are some hybrid varieties in these trials, including in orange carrots, and I think there are a couple of hybrid varieties in the Radicchio list, so that's not something you'd probably have success with if you're looking to plant the same variety next year. Yeah,
and you can, the search engine in Seedling is not, we are redoing this, but you can still search a variety here. Let's say if I look at, let's see if it worked here, but for example, here I look at heatless pepper, and I can click on it and in your account, and you can see, oh, it's a hybrids. You can also see different review. You can see also the breeder. Sorry, this is a Monsanto variety. Maybe where I take it. So you can see the origin here. Who is a breeder, the hybrids, or not. So
yeah, thanks.
And maybe just one more note on stipends and trials, and also just the current context. Like, we'd prefer, and we think it would be better for everyone, just if you think you can't maybe bring all the trials that you've signed up for to completion, like that's fine. And we'd really encourage you to like just plant fewer trials and try to take them all the way, rather than to plant many trials and not be able to follow them through. Like ultimately it's less work for you to plant fewer trials, and it does lead to, to actually getting results of your work. So we'd really encourage you to really think about your capacity, like anything that's changed during the year. And, you know, it's okay. Like, even if you received seeds, it's okay to not plant them. You can donate them to someone else. You can grow them next year. But don't, yeah, please like consider what you can actually grow all the way as much as possible. We're at actually the time limit of the webinar. If there aren't any more questions, is there any last questions or comments? In which case, I might just wrap it up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Helen, just the last question is around planting dates for the carrots. It's around this time of the season, at least in Quebec. Can you just remind us briefly the planting dates for the different crops?
Sure. I mean, it's going to really vary by region, and we really would encourage people to use their own like previous experience of their crop and their region. But generally for the orange carrots, we're trying to plant them as a storage crop, which would mean, I think, any time between now and probably sometime in early July, potentially. For red carrots, definitely better to plant them a bit later because of the tendency towards bolting. Planting them as the days are getting shorter rather than lengthening, I think would reduce the chance of bolting a little bit, but it probably will still happen a bit. Rutabaga can be planted, I think, in some regions up until July as a storage crop. And Radicchio, I feel like Alex has done more of the research on that than me. So I would say, again, like really, you know, probably the farmers have the best knowledge of when to plant in their region. But Alex, I don't know if you want to fill in a bit on Radicchio.
Yeah, with Radicchio, it's really tricky, and I would encourage you, if you haven't grown it before, to maybe seek out if there's anyone in your region or nearby who has grown it, and ask them when they plant, and then let me know. What I've heard from both Osborne and Johnny's, which gives me a perspective from both like East and West Coast, is transplanting, so planting into the field. Seeding at the summer solstice. So somewhere in mid to late June, and then transplanting 4 weeks later. But I think that really needs to be tinkered with, depending on the variety and where you are. And, you know, actually someone from up north has been asking me, we need to plant them earlier. So there's a lot of unknown with our latitudes because the people we're getting advice from are further south than us. So sorry not to provide a more concrete answer, but that maybe gives you a range to work with.
Thanks, Helen and Alex.
Yeah, feel free to write comments in the SeedLinked on what's work or what don't work. Those comments are going to be visible. And so I think it's not only the review, but comments are going to be able to be shared.
Maybe to add one more detail about Radicchio, I think that the challenge there, the balance you're going for is planting early enough that you have enough of a head that it's mature before it starts to get really slowed down with cold, but not so early that you're gonna have problems with bolting. And that's why it's just sort of finicky with each variety.
And for any other follow-up questions, you know, you have, like in this presentation and on the website, like you have contact info for all of us. So, you know, really don't hesitate to get back in touch for any specific questions or things that aren't clear. So I guess that might wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. Like, thanks to the presenters, to the participants. This has been recorded and will be on, I guess, on the Seed Security website, and the link will be shared with you if you needed to rewatch it or just see the slides again. And I guess just, you know, wish you really the best with your season and with your trials. And please join the Facebook group if you haven't. And we'd really, you know, looking forward to seeing what you're doing and your pictures and hear what's going on.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone. Bye.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Happy planting.
Have a great
Yeah,
season.
have a good season.